workplace institutional racism, one example is wage gaps. There's also education is a institutional racism. So what we're seeing right now is a big backlash against critical race theory. We're seeing a lot of propaganda about what it is, what it isn't, and what the abolishment of critical race theory, specifically in the South, is trying to remove Black stories from history. So you're systematically removing contributions, stories, narratives from the history of the United States as contributions of Black folks. That is a form of institutional racism. Housing, when you're redlining in the housing market, we see this all the time. Overcharging, inflating interest rates for Black folks, or gentrifying areas in which Black folks once lived, but then you want to recruit and bring in white folks or non-Black folks. And so you increase the price. And we've seen this systematically happen over and over and over. This is institutional. Why? Because it's in the policy. It's in the procedure. And the more you do it, it's going to create, like we talk about in our assembly line, a mass discrepancy and disproportionate rates of favoring one group and disenfranchising another. And so the implications of this is your family may find yourself in these places: workplace, institutional racism, education. We don't know which families are in that battle for critical race theories, or which children, all of our children who are in these classrooms where they don't see themselves represented in history or their ancestors represented in history. And what kind of messaging does that send when you don't see your ancestors represented in history, who are very well responsible for the history of this country, its flourishing and its culture and everything about it? That is what we call institutional racism. Same thing with law. So we have the prosecution of Black folks for nonviolent crimes, the over-policing. We saw this with the war on drugs. We disproportionately incarcerated Black and brown bodies on the war on drugs. It was very, very intentional. But it was legal, right? And so if it's legal, it's institutional. And when it's institutional, it's pervasive. And that's what makes it a strong threat, because it's one thing to have a stressor today and, oh my God, like my roof is leaking. It's a one thing stressor. I can get rid of it, move on. But every single day there's a stressor, and that leads to chronic stress. And that's what makes it a threat and not a stressor for Black folks.